Good morning. I am totally jazzed about being a part of this re-energizing conference. It's something, like you said, I hadn't heard of before, and I've been doing this type of stuff for a little while. Work with a lot of organizations at various points along the continuum of inclusion and diversity, and this is ahead of the curve. What we'll be doing, at least my plan, is for this to be an interactive experience. So if you plan to sit back, might shift your plans a little bit. We want to ask you to be involved. I'm going to share with you some of the things I've learned through the years to help put this in the context of leadership. I understand everyone in the room is a leader of some sort, whether it's official title or not, but usually the official title, along with diversity champions and folks of those of that nature, and that's what this focus is going to be. So I'd like to ask you to take a moment and be ready to take a look at an image I'm going to put up on the screen. I'm going to ask you to look at that image and to simply call out loudly what it is you personally see. Anybody not ready? Okay, here we go. What do you see? Tree. Someone sees a tree. A Dalmatian, a dog with no particular breed. What else? A bear? Okay. Where's the bear? Bear? Bear here. Oh, that's the bear. Okay. That's some other folks' dog, but that's your bear. Okay. What else do you see? Bear, tree, dog, Dalmatian, anything else? Snow. Okay, so there's snow there. Art. Thank you. Very good. That's somewhere between the literal and the critical. There's some folks that are thinking, don't worry, I'm a charter member of the Psychic Network, so I'm picking up your vibes, that's just some black ink on white paper or white ink on black paper. But so what? What's the point? We all know that we look at things from different perspectives. Some people have different perspectives on diversity. Yeah, great, wonderful, we get that. So what does that have to do with what we're doing here today? It has to do with your job to make sure you bring people along, because some people see something different than you see. Some people don't see anything like what you see, but you still have to get them on board to move with you to get the Volusia County goals met. So how do you do that? Well, part of that is making sure you keep people involved. And I find that it's imperative that you keep people involved, but how do you do that if they just can't see the picture? Well, what I find is a lot of it has to do with how much trust you as a leader can develop. People will follow you if they believe you're working in their best interests. So you have to work to develop that trust through time and relationship so that they'll go along with you even if they don't see the picture. That's an important piece of being inclusive. That's the value. A lot of what creates our perspective on life has to do with where we have been born and raised and how we grow up. It has an influence on how we operate, how we lead, the culture and the environment that we create. So I'd like to ask you to take a stand in this next piece, and if standing's not comfortable for you, just raise your hand proudly. How many folks were born right here in Volusia County? Hand stand proudly. All right, number of folks. Okay, maybe we need to get out a little bit more. Oh no, no, seriously, not in Volusia County, but in the state of Florida. All right, number of folks. Okay, not in Florida, but in what we call the South, according to this map. How many folks? Stand if you would. All right, in the South. All right, not the South, but in the Northeast. Oh, good. Whoa, whoa. Well, so it's true what they say about people coming to Florida. All right. The Midwest. Midwest. Okay. All right. The West. A few folks from the West. Alaska or Hawaii. And then finally, elsewhere in the world. All right. Thank you very much. Excellent. Excellent. Well, I've asked you about where you're from, and I think it's an opportunity now for me to share a little bit about my journey. I was born and raised in New York City, in Harlem specifically. From there, I went to work, as Mr. Deneen indicated, with Sears, Roebuck and Company, and they moved me to Nolens, or for the non-initiated, New Orleans, Louisiana, and then from there to Nashville, Tennessee, and then from there to Atlanta, Georgia. But that was way back in the old days, a far more radical time, as it were. And so I spent a little time with that particular organization. And actually, Sears, Roebuck and Company, if you go back far enough, and it may still be there, I haven't visited them in a while, there was a thing over the door that says satisfaction guaranteed or your money back. How many folks have seen that? Well, that was interesting, and that drew me to it because of that culture and environment. But eventually it became like satisfaction guaranteed or your money back if you can get it. So that caused me to make a shift, and I moved to the Disney organization, and I spent about 15 years there, a much more conservative look, as it were, working some in merchandising, but mostly in human resources, organizational development, and coaching senior leadership. So again, I asked, so what? Where we come from, we do different things, we get that. But the point is, I worked at probably the largest attraction in the world to now, but it's probably the smallest attraction in the world. It's called Walton's Mountain Museum in Schuyler, Virginia. So I find one thing to be consistent, regardless of the size of the organization. There's a culture that's created, there's an environment that's created, and where I've worked and been most productive is when I've been comfortable in those environments, where you can have different states that have kind of a feel, different cities have a different feel, different organizations, different divisions, different departments, but it really all comes down to the type of environment that you create. And what I find is, and it's documented in my book, is that it all comes back to the leadership. How do you show up? What do you do in your job to create an inclusive environment so that people can bring their whole selves to the job and get the job done? It's not about just bringing people in and getting the numbers together and having parties and different types of food and stuff like that. No, it's about valuing people, and it's a yes and situation, because you want to get different people in, but you also want to get your job done. And sometimes people tend to think in a polarized way, it's either we can get all those people in or we can do the business. No, it's about both. You never lower or question your standards. I talked with Mr. Deneen this morning. He's very clear about that. We don't compromise our standards. That would water down everything. But you also don't run away from bringing in people and being inclusive, which leads me to my definition of inclusive environment, and that's creating a place where we value the similarities and differences. And I emphasize the similarities because we hear a lot about the differences, because that's where the sparks fly. And people make a big noise about that. But it's also about what you have in common with other folks. You may have something in common with someone who doesn't look anything like you, or they might not even be the same gender, but you share some things, common experiences, common approaches, common style, personality, those types of things. And why is that important? Because it helps us get the job done. It's not just because we want to take nice pictures and show people. It's because we want to get better. And bringing it all the way home to this radio station you may be familiar with, WIII-FM. Anybody tune into that one? It is What Is In It For Me. So that's nice to hear, but help me understand, how does that connect to me as an individual? Well, it's about different environments and the way that you create yours that's critical. It's not only about the numbers. We hear a lot about that because we can, get things to make a big deal about the numbers, but it's about being inclusive of everyone. You hear about people of color being included, you hear about women being included, but it's also inclusive of white males who are typically not talked about when you talk about diversity. Doggone it, we're talking about everyone. You have to include everyone. That's what it's about, everyone working together productively, inclusive of all groups, regardless of what they look like, where they're from, all of those things, with consistent standards that you don't lower to do anything. You question them because sometimes they're not valid or bona fide. Then you make changes, but you still get the job done. I found through researching for this particular project, because I look into what's going on in the organization, is there anything that we can kind of mirror up? And it was absolutely incredible symbiosis between my approach and the approach here in Volusia County. And I take you to the first part of your HR commitment statement and focus on the fact that it's not just talk, it's the basis of your business culture. That's why we do this stuff. So it's in writing. It's clear that's the intent behind it. That's why we do it. And it's why we are here in order to get the job done. It's the basis for our business culture. I want you to be prepared for a little bit of math. So I'll give you a mental palette sweep moment. Because I'm going to ask you to count the number of times the letter F appears in the passage I'm going to put up in a moment. Count to yourself, and I want you to tip off the folks around you, and count the total number of F's you see in the main body. Anybody not clear what I'm asking for? 1, 2, 3. Okay, count the number of times the letter F appears in the main body, please, to yourself. Now I'm going to ask for a show of hands how many total F's you see. How many see 1? Okay, no. Okay, seriously, 2 F's, hands please. Few hands there. 3 F's. Oh, good. 4 F's. Okay, 5 F's. 6 F's. 7 F's. Okay, somewhere between 2 and 6. We're looking at the same thing, right? Interesting. Well, let me share with you what I see, having seen it a few times. There's the first F in feature, second F in films. We're with me on that. I think most people saw those. The third F in of, the fourth F in of, the fifth F in scientific, and the sixth F in of. So there's actually 6 F's in this passage, and we don't always see them all. So what caused us to see or miss some of these? What got in the way? Phonics. Say more about that.
Sounds like a V instead of an F.
Yeah, it faked us out. Slid right under the radar. If it had been a real F and stood up, we'd have noticed it. But it sounds like a V. So skip that and move on. What else caused us to see or miss some? Capitalization. So in this case, size does matter. What else? Perception. Say more about perception.
People perceive what they first see and they don't look beyond it.
Yeah, you take a snapshot, right? We can't spend all day on it. You see it, you think you see it. And the research shows that things embedded in a word are more difficult to catch quickly than on the ends of words. A number of reasons for it in terms of why we don't see it. But it's just a humbling piece as bright, intelligent leaders that sometimes what we think is pretty straightforward, you ain't quite got it all. So we say you have to be intentional about being inclusive, because sometimes we do it and no harm intended, but it can have a disparate impact on certain groups of people. So we have to be really intentional about it. In fact, to that end, let me ask you, metaphorically speaking for a moment, thinking about that of situation or the F's, who might some of the F's be metaphorically, or the ofs be in the workplace? We don't intentionally, but sometimes we overlook. What groups of people fall into that category? People we sometimes just kind of not notice. New people. that what you said? New people? Quiet people. Yeah, we miss that a lot. The quiet people, they had something to say, speak up. No, they're quiet. No, most of the people are quiet. We pay attention to the stars and the slugs, and then we let the other folks go. Who else might we unintentionally overlook? Older workforce, maybe? Or depending on age, maybe the younger workforce. But what else? People at the same level. There's no reason to pay attention particularly to those folks. Maybe sometimes we do it. Any other groups? People that look like you, maybe. Oh, you got to focus on those other people. Yeah. And sometimes I hear about people who do the cleaning up or the cafeteria staff, but you know, they're probably contractors, doesn't matter. But the point is, we sometimes don't intentionally, but we unintentionally overlook people, and that's the message. We have to be intentional about it. And actually, Joe Gernston said it in the best way I've seen, is that if you don't intentionally, deliberately, and proactively include, you will unintentionally exclude. So you got to stay on top of it in order to be able to not be victimized by it and lose as a result. So with all this, so now, what can you do? Well, I can offer you a suggestion based on a model that we spent some time putting together, congruent with the diversity initiatives, and it has 3 components: diversity representation, personal consciousness, and productive interactions. I think that'll give you a more inclusive environment. Looking at diversity representation first, it's about all the similarities and differences that make us who we are. Really, it's about, the goal is to have the internal workforce mirror or reflect what's available externally at all levels in the organization. Yeah, doesn't sound particularly complex. Most people don't have a problem with it philosophically. And you know, Volusia County doesn't look the same as Dade County. It doesn't look the same as Gulf County in the Panhandle. It's very specific to your location and what's around you. And then depending on the level you're looking for, the higher you go, the wider the net you cast. You may go all the way to Ohio or something like that. You never know, right? But the point is, philosophically it's okay. But if you look around, is that the reality? Do you have that type of workforce internally that mirrors what's available externally? And if not, it begs the question, why? Why is it that we don't have certain groups? Why are certain types of people not represented equally in terms of proportions of what they are in the society who can do the type of work we have? And there's all kinds of rationale and reasons for, but you as a leader have to ask yourself, why is it that way? Does my leader over here, my coworker, have a more representative workforce? What's up with that? Why are some people not as comfortable potentially in my area? So you need to ask yourself that question. The other way of looking at it is, even if you had the numbers, are they represented equally throughout the organization? Or are they concentrated in certain buildings, certain floors, certain jobs? When you do a diagonal slice of the organization, what's it look like? Does it look a certain way at one point and not the other? Those are the things you as individual leaders have to ask and challenge the HR department to help you to get to that goal. That's the intent. It's not an HR initiative. It's to help the organization improve. It's to help you as a leader do your job, and they're there to support you. And that's why I find the other anchor point of the second part of the commitment statement that focuses on, well, it's about a workforce that reflects the population we serve. That way we can do a better job of supporting our citizens. Again, congruency in terms of inclusiveness, diversity, and the things that you say you're about. Simply put, diversity representation, everyone in your area of responsibility feels like a valued part of the work group. How does this fit in with inclusiveness and diversity? Well, sometimes folks come and then they go. People will come because you have great looking websites that look very inclusive, slick brochures that have all kinds of people represented. Oh, I think I want to work there. And then they come in and the people say, well, we don't do that around here. Oh, we tried that. That doesn't work. You have to wait your turn. You need to pay your dues and things like that. And I go, I don't need this. And what happens is the brightest and the best, just like someone said this morning, they leave. They have options. You have to compete, as Mr. Deneen said, to get the brightest and the best. Otherwise, you're left with the leftovers and the losers. So if you want to keep the best folks, you have to make it an environment where people want to stay, where they feel valued. They feel the boss knows who they are, what they're about, what they can contribute, treat them as individuals, et cetera, and get the job done. Yes, and. So what can we do to keep them is the question. How do you hold on to folks once you get them? Because we can do all kinds of great marketing and recruiting and stuff. And then when people get here, they may go, oh, here it goes again. I remember when I took my first real job, I was so naive. I said, and I don't want to have to come there and show up and just be there and look like I'm busy when really the job is done. Can I go home? He said, oh, of course, we don't do that here. Yeah, not only did they do that there, they had an informal dress code on the weekend. You come in casual clothes to show you're committed. So it was totally opposed to what you say you're about. So I just want to come in, do my job, and leave. You come in, do your job, and then you come back and show in unofficial ways that you're truly committed. Well, if that's going to help us improve, fine, but it doesn't. It's a misplaced, misaligned political expectation. Don't like those kinds of things. So along those same lines, we have to deal with, in order to be able to hold on to people, this concept of PC. What does PC mean in a non-computer sense? Politically correct. I want to go on record as saying political correctness is absolutely absurd. Let me say that again. Political correctness is absolutely absurd. You can't walk around on eggshells being afraid to talk to people and build an inclusive environment. But nor do you want to be cavalier and just say anything you want to say and be crude and rude either. So my definition of PC is to be personally conscious about what you do. Think about it before you do or say something. Don't just run off at the mouth and then back into it. And by definition, it's about building that atmosphere again of trust and respect, having patience and being willing to listen to people to understand their perspectives. Don't assume we see it all, because we'll have them counting those F's and you'll be counting those F's and we'll be going at it again. That's not what it's about. It's about being aligned to move forward with the goals of the organization. Speaking of alignment, this is totally congruent with the ongoing valuing and respecting diversity sessions that looks at how we treat each other, and the little things that we do make a big difference. Sometimes called micro inequities, big word, expect me to say anything like that again, but they make a difference, and it wears on people. They don't want to be in an environment where they don't feel as though they're truly valued or included. So again, I want to give you some tips and tools to help you deal with this idea. And the first one is a four-letter word. People tend to like four-letter words. To address things that occur that raise the issue of diversity and inclusion. And the first one is ouch. If someone does or says something to you in your totally subjective opinion that doesn't sit right, I suggest you say ouch. If ouch doesn't work for you in your particular environment or culture, don't say it. Just say time out, hold on, rewind, back up, something to stop the conversation, to let the other person know that's not working for me. And that's okay. You can say a little or a lot. Let me give you an example. I was talking to someone about people with disabilities and used the word handicap. And someone said, ouch. I said, why'd you ouch me? Get off my back. I'm being PC here. I didn't say cripple. What's your problem? Well, they chose to explain that the history of the word handicap comes from the time when people with a disability could only earn a living by taking their cap in hand and begging. So it has some baggage for me. Wow, I didn't know that. Never heard that before. What do? Take that word out of your vocabulary? Never say it again? No. There are people disabled who call themselves handicapped. You have to base it on the individual. So I learned something. Then I learned some more. After I shared that story, I got an email from someone that said, hey, I looked that up. It's not true. I know it's an urban legend, but it makes the point. You don't have to prove your ouch to anyone. You share that feedback. Didn't work for me. It's one adult to another. If I want to get along with you, I'll find another reference. If I want to irritate you, I'll keep doing it, right? So it's an adult decision. Another quick example. A colleague of mine would say, good boy. Now I can just suck it up, not say anything, one day explode. I could get belligerent. I can go into a whole long diatribe of the history of the word boy, internalized oppression, or I could just say, ouch. She knows it didn't work for me. I know she didn't mean it. We're being productive a few moments later. Simple, powerful, ouch. The opposite of ouch is oops. When something comes out of your mouth and it lands in a way you didn't intend, don't pretend no one heard it. They heard it. They heard it. Own it. Hey, that was not the way I intended. And then explain a little, not a lot, because a lot sounds defensive. Like, this is what I meant to say. Whoa, well, don't go there again. It also doesn't give you license to do something crazy and then throw a oops out. No. And you know when that happens? When someone says, I don't want to offend anybody. You know, right there, that's a big oops. Don't take offense, but I'm going to be offensive. No, stop. Don't. Stop right there. Pause. You realize your inner monologue wasn't working? You said that out loud? And then particularly from a leadership perspective, your job is to observe, to pay attention to what's happening around you. And that's especially important because most of the time people don't say anything when something doesn't feel right. They don't know what to say or how to say. It's not comfortable. But you notice the body language. They shift, their eyes roll, they move around, something. And what I suggest you do, which is pretty radical, because I know in my learning as a leader, you don't ask questions you don't have answers to. You don't say things you don't know how to respond to. But just say something like, what just happened? Throw it out there. And then if you find you get too deep into the pool, you call up HR and get some help. But most things we can handle one-on-one to say, what happened? That didn't sound right. Does that sound right to you? Not persecuting an individual, but calling it to the point that something about that didn't sit right. Maybe it's just me. Talk about it. And the more rapport, the more trust you have, the easier it is, the less you get in trouble. People don't feel they have to go file a claim somewhere. And people will talk through it. And then finally, as a leader, you have to handle it. You can't just talk about it. You have to do something about it. And what I find is the sooner you set those expectations, the more powerful it will be, the easier it is to refer back to. So what that means in a practical sense, when you're new to an organization or to a department or division, you say, hey, this is how I want to operate. I want to be inclusive. I want people to value each other, da-da-da-da-da. And people are going, yeah, I've heard that before. Yeah, PC, yeah, go on. But when something happens and someone says something like, isn't that just like a woman? You say, whoa, hold on. That's the type of thing we talked about that doesn't sound inclusive. Let's move on. Simple. You don't slap the person around, threaten them with a written report and all those types of things the first time. Those types of things you want to address because you said, just like I said back when we started, that type of thing is not what we want to do. So you start to more clearly define that environment for your people so they understand what it means and it's not abstract. But then we have to deal with the human factor. Doggone it. And the fact that we start to believe that you are too sensitive. And let me tell you of a personal journey I went on. I'm thinking, I was going to say, I was at a session and I said one time, okay, in about 15 minutes, guys, we're going to take a break and meet out and across the hall in the other room. And my business partner said, well, I'm not feeling very included with that comment about guys. I said, get over yourself. I looked it up. It's non-gender specific. It's not something that you can call me on being the diversity police. It doesn't mean anything to you, particularly if you're from Texas. But the point is, I had my consciousness raised because I learned from her this thing called a reversal tool. So I tried it on. and said, okay, how about you do this, Mr. Smarty Pants? Reverse that comment and see how it feels to you. Okay, so here we go. Rewind. I come out. I say, okay, gals, in about 15 minutes, we're going to take a break and reconvene across the hall. And that didn't sit right with me at all. So I learned. I can't be the one who decides how far I can go when I'm talking to someone else. I can have great intent, but my impact can be very, very different. And it would serve me much better to be enlightened enough to realize that maybe I didn't see all those little F's or something along those lines, and step back and be a little more humble. Doesn't take your power away. You still have the position power to say, hey, you know, I'm sorry, that wasn't my intent. And move on. So you find another word. Okay, folks, that works really well in the South. We're going to move and do this, that, and the other. What about jokes? You know, we don't want to create this sterile environment where you can't joke around and say things and people going, oh, no, now you're telling me I got to be PC. We can't have fun. We poke fun at each other. We don't mean anything by it. Well, a lot of times that has unintended consequences, particularly on new people who feel pressure to conform whether they like it or not. And I guarantee you there's people who've been there a while that don't like it, but they're smart enough not to say anything because that's how you get ahead. But that's not what this is about. It was a situation where a colleague of mine was at a party, and a bunch of people around, and then the joke teller gets up and starts off, and you just know they're going to go someplace they shouldn't have ought to gone. And so they start about one of the ex walks into the uh-oh, and then for a moment, which seemed like a lifetime, it's like one of those slow motion things in television and movies, she had this inner monologue going with the proverbial devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other saying, get over yourself. You know, it's just a party. Chill out. And the other one saying, this is what you do. This is your life's work. You're enlightened. You don't want to be a part of this. Stand up, you coward. Do something about it. And so she started to twitch and not knowing what to do. And in a moment of brilliance, an inspiration came. And she stepped away from there, walked out of the room, and went to the drink station. It worked. But what happened after that was even more powerful. Everyone else in the room, save a couple of folks, went right behind her and left only a few people to listen to the inappropriate joke. Never doubt the power that you have to make a difference. People watch you. You're a role model, whether you want to be or not. They pay attention to what and how you do. So you can just make that statement by going, I don't want to be a part of that. Thank you very much. Same thing with emails and all those other things. Stand for what you believe in. The third part of the model is productive interactions, and that's about leading with consistency, working past your limitations, and incorporating things that will help you do a better job of being inclusive. That's all. And that goes back to the last part of the commitment statement that talks about an environment where the employees share their perspectives, which gives us more engagement, better morale, and productivity. Again, it's linked to the real world, real results, not some idea of talking about it. It's about being inclusive. So keep in mind, though, as smart as you may be, your reality may or may not equal others' reality. And occasionally we need to be reminded of this. So what I'd like you to do is to be prepared in just a moment to talk to your neighbor. So you might want to pick who's going to be your neighbor for the moment. And I'm going to ask you to pick one of the three triangles I'm going to put up on the screen and read that to your neighbor, and then listen as they read one of the triangles back to you. Fair enough? We ready? All right, here they are. Pick one, read it to your neighbor, please. All right. Everyone have an opportunity. So did they actually read this to you? Did they say once an AA lifetime burden, the hand, Patterson, the spring? Don't worry, I won't ask how many people did, oh, never mind, I lied. How many folks did not hear that the first time? Please, did not hear that the first time. No names. Did not. Yeah. Vast majority based on an informal survey of approximately 200 people. So I ask, what happened this time? Why did we not see it in many cases? You assume, you know how to spell that. What else? You thought you knew what it said. You can't go through and analyze everything all the time. You see it. You heard of seeing is believing. Sometimes believing is seeing. You expect it to be there, and there it is. But there it ain't. What else? Oh, that's good. Next week is political savvy. Yeah, well, thank you for covering. I'm blaming it on Microsoft for autocorrect. That's what it is. Yeah, so lots of reasons, lots of rationale. It's just to draw the attention to we don't always see what's right there. So when people say things to us, we need to be a little more humble about how we respond and be truly inquisitive as opposed to advocating for our position. Ask. So what, let me understand, not tell me why you're doing that. Help me understand what it is you're seeing or why you see it that way. That's a critical piece to being able to develop an inclusive environment. And it's about what's in it for you again. Well, part of that is the fact that, well, when people come to you, well, let me give you an example. You're working with folks and someone does something that's not quite right in your area of responsibility, and you see them doing this, and you think to yourself, well, that's not exactly the way we're supposed to do it, but heck, to remind me of myself when I was that age, that turned out pretty good, so we're going to let that go, right? Then you see someone else doing a comparable thing, and they don't remind you of yourself, and you call them out and say, hey, let me just pull your coat. That's not the kind of thing we do around here. And they come back with something that surprises you and say, why are you picking on me because I'm X? And you retort, hey, don't hide behind the fact you're X. We just don't do that around here. And all the time we're being inconsistent. Not realizing that we might have what I've heard referred to as unconscious bias. We may not realize that we're doing things in a way, not viciously, not intentionally, but it has a disparate impact on some people. So just be willing to hear what they have to say. Listen and hear their perspective, and then move on from there. So that's what's in it for you, along with the model to help you to put this in perspective, to give you some grounding in actually doing the stuff that can help you improve what you do in the county, and that'll make for a more inclusive environment. If you would, for me, if you could stand, please. I'm going to ask you to raise your hand, put two fingers together like I have here, and then if you would just simply put your hand to your chin, please. Thank you. Now look around. What did I ask you to do? Hands to your chin. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you got that one. Good. You may say you're inclusive and you support diversity and inclusion, but it's what you do that people will follow, believe, and build your environment behind. So if you would, just take a seat, please. Sit back, relax, close your eyes if you trust me, or more importantly, if you trust your neighbor. And imagine, if you will, a huge, dark warehouse as you think about your area of responsibility. You live there with only one flashlight to see by. Everything you know about what's contained in this enormous space is what you've seen by the beam of one small flashlight. You can't see very much or very far in this space. You hear a few things near you, but the sound fades quickly because the space is so huge. Whenever you want to look for something, you may or may not find it, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's there, but you just haven't shown your light on it. You can only see what your light is focused on and only identify that which you already know. Next, imagine that one day someone flicks on a switch. There, for the first time in a sudden burst of brilliance and sound and color, you can see the entire warehouse, and it's nothing like you've ever imagined. Lights are blinking, flashing, glowing, and shooting sparks of red, yellow, blue, and green. You see colors you don't recognize, ones you've never seen before. Music floods the room with fantastic kaleidoscopes, surround sound, melodies you've never heard before. The vastness, complexity, depth, and breadth of everything going on around you is almost overwhelming. You realize then that what you used to think was your reality was hardly a speck within the vast wonder of all that is. You now also see things that are interrelated, how they play off each other, how everything fits. Even the things you were aware of have an entirely new context so that they too seem completely new and super real. And then the light goes off again. But you remember, nothing can cancel your awareness of how much more there is to your life. Life now has new, fuller meaning for you. You can come back, open your eyes if you would. That's from The Infinite by Anita Moorjani. I'll take you back to where we started, to the what's technically called, from my psychologist friends, it's not the Rorschach test. I'm surprised someone didn't say that. It's an embedded figure. Once you see it, first of all, you think if you can see it, others should see it. Sometimes they do, most times they do, not all the time. But the key is once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you've learned, once you've crossed over and you're truly inclusive, you notice things, you pay attention, you're intentional, you're motivating, you're helping people. And it's pretty energizing, actually. It's not a downer, it's an upper. And you're creating that inclusive environment, even for those who don't see or won't see or pretend they don't see, which is why we have progressive discipline. But the point is, it's your job to bring people along, but you're not alone. The Human Resources Division is here to help the 42 businesses of Volusia County government. You have the anchor that you heard about this morning, the ongoing, unprecedented, get out in front of it process to be able to make things happen in an inclusive way because it's just smart business. It's your decision. You want to have the type of area where people are knocking on the door? The thing is, are they banging on the door to get out or they're banging on the door to get in? What type of area you create makes the difference. And are you the type of place that people want to come in and work, or are they trying to get out and go someplace else? Remember, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always gotten. And if you think you can make a difference by incorporating the things we've talked about today, just like Henry Ford said, either way, you're absolutely right. I want to give a special thank you to all the folks that helped put this together, especially Jamie Edmondson and Seth and my business partner, Marion Case. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time and attention.